What's up, guys, and welcome back for another solo mining episode 79. We're getting pretty close to actually pulling out of Null-Sec, so I figured this would be a good episode to kind of, go over some Null-Sec mining, talk about bookmarking and all that good stuff. But also, yesterday marked the 1 year of the solo mining series, so we've accomplished a lot since starting as an alpha with Adventure and working our way up to this point, so hopefully more to come. Alright, so it's been a minute since you've seen the Null-Sec tune here. I haven't really done a solo Null-Sec episode, mostly because I'm in the process of kind of moving out of here. Got about a day left or so, and as you can tell, still have some stuff left to move out. These command centers are probably not going to make their way back out of Null-Sec because they weigh too much and they're just not worth carrying. But I'm using a procure today, and this is kind of like my daily driver for just Null-Sec mining in general, because it's cheap, it's tanky. We can basically just kind of tank the rats, which is ideal instead of just trying to like destroy them. Especially if it's like 3 battleship rat spawn, then it's better to just be able to tank through that and fill up your ore hold. But before we actually get started here, and we'll kind of look at the fit and everything, this is just kind of a stripped down fit. The reason I don't run rigs here is because I can repackage this, throw it into the crane, and then go wherever, pop it back up, and do some mining that way. Normally I'd be doing Mercoxit mining, but I already shipped all my Mercoxit gear back. So we're going to do like normal Argor Bistot, because I've kind of covered Mercoxit mining ad nauseum at this point, but I think it'd be nice to actually go out to we'll probably go out to the medium, see if we can grab some Amber or whatever. But just this is a 82 million fit here, so a little bit more expensive than like the Coveter, but we're going to be running on boosted. So strip miner 1's in the top here, and then multi-spec 2, and then a medium extender 2, and then just loading up the bottom with mining laser upgrade 2s. And this is just a good to go fit, and is carrying like 20 Hornets. Usually don't lose these. I'll take out like if it's like a single battleship in the rat spawn when I get to Anomaly, I'll take out everything, all the cruisers and stuff, and I'll let the Hornets kind of work on the battleship while I'm still mining. And then but then usually if it's like more than one battleship, or if I'm getting really close to filling up, I'll pull them in and just wait till I fill up and everything, which you'll kind of see. But this tune is just waiting on the very last research BPO. If you guys watched the solo Null-Sec video, which feels like forever ago, the Capital Core Temp Regulator Blueprint is finally almost done, and it'll be a 10 of 20, which is nice. We're going to hold on to these just in case we want to build these in the future. But as you can see, I also have a regular Core Temp Regulator Blueprint that's 10 of 20. And then my nanite repair paste I kind of kept here in case I did any sort of PI. I want to do PI, but I think we're going to be shifting PI over to the high-sec side, because I think that high-sec PI is really, really good if you take into account you're going to pay a little bit higher taxes with the Concord stuff. Once we kind of get this character back out, then we'll kind of start exploring opening up PI in high-sec with all of our alts. This tune is actually pretty crazy for the most part, and one of the big reasons I'm actually really wanted to get this guy out of here, because this character is 81 million skill points, which is insane, and it can do a lot of stuff. I don't know if it'll retain all of its SP. What this tune will probably do is become the rare ore site in like the Poshford miner, the miner that can kind of go out and do the remote stuff. Maybe. I could also technically pull a lot of skill points out of this tune and get another entirely new mining alt up and running, so we could potentially get up to where we're running like 4 alts. But I'm not really a big fan of running anything over 3. Like say 3 Hulks and a Porpoise, or 3 Max and a Porpoise, or whatever the configuration is probably the sweet spot. But this tune is basically good to go. And actually, I want to do an audit on this tune. It's been a month since I actually kind of looked at this tune. So like I have shown you in other videos, this tune is in a different corporation than mine, so I'm not going to have access to a lot of my fits. But Industrial Command Ship, Porpoise, you can see it can already run Porpoise, so we know it's got command skills and stuff. And then it's got mining barge skills. It's pretty close to Marauder. Well, not really pretty close. It's 2 months, but it also can do like it's a full Tengu as well. But let's go to the ship tree here. That's what I want to do. I'm gonna look at the ship tree or side. That'll give me a good idea. Oh, so yeah, look at this. It's like max exhumer already. Max expeditionary frigate. Go ahead and look at its skills here. I already know it could do Mercoxit, but also it was working a lot on reprocessing. But this tune will be great for reprocessing if we decide to do manufacturing in high sec for sure. Alright, so the first thing that I always do before I go out and mine in Null-Sec, and this is really important, the mining is pretty straightforward if you've done any sort of mining in the past. We want to be able to bookmark. We want to be able to know where all of the things that we're interested in are, and that way, because of the anomalies, the rocks and the anomalies are spread out. We want to minimize the amount of time we're burning in between rocks. So this is a big reason why I carry a crane or buzzard. Buzzard's like for a scanning ship and stuff like that. Anything with covert ops works. It allows you to just kind of like go around the system and kind of bookmark a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get into the buzzard here, and we're going to go ahead and look around the anomalies and kind of see what we see. And usually it'll just hit up with probably the medium, most likely, and then kind of work our way up. So we're gonna go and undock here. Now I always travel around with covert ops because one, it won't trigger the rat. When you get into the anomaly, it won't trigger the rat spawn. But we're gonna go in here. Now what we want the medium asteroid cluster, and you don't have to go to 0. I usually just like warp 100k. And that way we can actually see kind of what's out there. There's some moon mining here. Once we're in warp, we're going to go ahead and hit cloak. And this will allow us just to like, stay undercover. We don't have to be rushed. If something comes in the system while we're doing this, then we're very well safe and everything. So let's go and look at these rocks here. Look at, we got some Arknor Bistot and some Omber. I want this Omber. So we're going to save this as Omber. And then we're going to go to the large next, do the same thing. Going to go warp within 100. And this is just a necessary step, right? Because then what we do is, once we actually have all the things we're interested in, we can look at what's out there, and then get in our mining ship and just go and do the thing. Go and warp in here. We're going to go through the large, and then the enormous, colossal. Usually just avoid the small altogether. So we got Arknor Bistot here, Mercoxit, got more Omber here. Which, and then I also can look at like how far these rocks are from technical 0. So we can go, I'm going to go Omber L. I'm just going to do 1 on here, because we can kind of burn to these other ones. Actually, we'll go ahead and save all of them. And it doesn't matter if we name them the same. We know that they're all going to be on the large, which we might not actually end up mining this Omber, especially if we find like Crocite or something. So there we go. So those 4 are marked. As you can see, probably the better one is this one up here, but we can burn pretty sufficiently. Like we were on this one, we could probably actually be pretty close to getting those too. So the next one we're going to go to is, let's go to the enormous. Go ahead and go 100k to that one. Omber's great, just because it's got stuff in it that we can use, but also just like Omber will have isogen. That's really the big reason why I'm kind of going after it. But if we can find like Crocite or something on the enormous or colossal, then that's probably a little bit better use of our time. So yeah, we got some Kernite out here. So let's look at the Kernite. Also isogen. So we'll probably actually take this one too. So we're on the enormous right now. So we go, I'll mark this Kernite E. We'll save these. And this is just, and we could end up actually mining all of this. That way we already have everything done. And then the last one we're going to go look at is the Colossal here, which should have some pretty decent stuff on there. Arknor Bistot's okay, but it's kind of like the Veldspar and the Veldspar and Plague of Null-Sec, so it's like it's always going to be in ready supply. So it's more or less like the Kernite, the Crocite, the Omber for the isogen and stuff like that. That I'm really kind of after. Go and warp here. And see, we have Mercoxid like all over, so I don't have my Mercoxid gear, or else would be doing it. And we're going to take this Crocite right here for sure. Crocite C. And because like this Crocite is good to go, because it's going to have Noxium in it, and so that's really important as well. So we'll probably go after that first and kind of see how that goes. But I'll show you guys kind of like, the mining process and how I kind of look for things and get out there and start mining. Nothing too complicated today. But then now we can just kind of head back to station, and we'll be good to go. So we'll go and get back to station, get everything kind of turned up. Now, the one thing you want to kind of realize and kind of keep in mind when you're doing Nullsec mining is just always keep an eye on Intel, always keep an eye on local. You guys can't see it because I have it obscured, but you always want to kind of keep that going. We don't really need this probe scanner up. Also, another thing you probably want to do, and another good reason to have a scan ship, if you have signatures in your system, you probably want to make sure that they are not wormholes. If they are wormholes, then you'll probably have some activity that won't be coming through Intel. And they can kind of surprise you in local. But we'll be flying in a Procure today. Not, crazy expensive. Really just kind of about the activity. All right, pretty much from everything we've seen, everything we bookmarked, we really want to go after that Crocite. So we're going to go ahead and undock here. And while we're mining this Crocite rock, I just want to kind of talk generally about Nullsec mining. Kind of my thoughts, what I really kind of did in the prime time of Nullsec, and why I've kind of moved away from it in more recent months, years, whatever. Now, here's the thing. If you are mining for profit, like if you're mining strictly to turn it into ISK, in Nullsec, the only thing really worth mining is Mercoxid. That's why I have a Procure out here. This Procure had Mercoxid crystals and deep core miners, and that's all I went for. So if there was Merc rocks, I would get in the Procure because it's a cheap, tanky ship that can tank the rats. That's important, and I would go after those rocks too. It just, my thing is, it takes so long to mine some of this stuff. Even Merc, the cycle times are really, really long. It's gotten to the point now where if you want to do any sort of high profit mining, whether it be in Null-Sec, low-sec, it doesn't matter where you are at, you're gonna have to grab a porpoise, because it's just those cycle times decreasing are just gonna help your sanity so much. The big difference, and I have run a Mackinac and stuff like that in Nullsec, and they're fine. They're not as good at tanking like battleship rats as maybe a Procure is. You can kind of stack those exhumers pretty tough. And if you really want to just like worry about like just filling up your ore hole and not really worrying about the rats that come in, then I would suggest you should tank for the resistances of the rats. So, for instance, Garistas, you would probably want to run something like my 95 kinetic thermal, so that if you have 3 battleships come in and you're in like a Mackinac, you technically have like 91. If you're getting really close, or if you're getting really close to filling up and like your shield is getting a little lower than you would like, then you could technically overheat and get that extra like 4%. But usually you'll fill up way before then. And the other thing too is, it's like, if you have a porpoise with you, one, you're going to make the cycle time so much easier. That way you don't have to be out on grid very long in case a wormhole pops in or somebody comes into local, whatever. You also have extra rats too. So like a porpoise and one mining all of their drones are enough to efficiently take down the battleships. You might take a little shield damage, especially if it's like 3 battleships that come in, then you might take a little damage, but you're going to regen that. So in terms of just what I'm doing out here and just this absolute solo mining without a boost or anything, it's possible to fill this thing up in 20 minutes or so. And if you get battleships immediately right out of the gate, then yeah, you're probably gonna like take as many of them down as possible. But also that's why I carry a Tengu as well. That's why his character is like a combat fit and scanning fit, because one tune like this in Nullsec can do a lot of things. PI, the rat sites, just kind of depending what you want to do. But also the benefit of miner having a combat ship is like if you do get that 3 battleship and you really just don't want to be bothered, you can just kind of warp, finish your run, warp, and then go grab your combat ship, come back, blow them up, and then get back out there and get after it. But you're going to be most of the time, more often than not, and more often than any other area in space, you're going to be hyper fixated, absolutely crazily hyper fixated on local and on intel, because that's what you're worried about, right? You like the second anything pops up in local, you either like warp to pause or cloak or do whatever you got to do. Not really an option. The cloaking is not really an option here. I have done this with like porpoise drone mining on rocks like this, where we're just like 3K from the rock. We just put drones on it. Somebody comes into local, suck the drones in, cloak, wait for them to pass through, and you're good to go. Because chances are, depending on the area of the where the anomaly is, in conjunction with like the warp or the jump gates or the wormhole, you could potentially be completely off of D-scan before they even get in range to get you on D-scan. We're talking like if you're quick enough to like get those drones in and actually cloak down, by the time they actually get close enough to actually get you on D-scan, they won't see you, so they'll assume that there's nobody there. So you could I wouldn't really necessarily recommend like prospect endurance out here, especially the prospect. You can sig tank with the prospect, but once you get like 3 battleships, they're probably gonna get you. Yeah, you just don't have a whole lot of tank on that ship. But the covert ops cloak is nice for situations where you're mining and you want to just, cloak down if somebody comes in local, and you can kind of warp and, go to safe pods and stuff. Endurance is okay. I usually only use the endurance in Null-Sec for like ice. But then again, also a situation that is so much better when you pair it with a porpoise. You can't compress ice with the porpoise, but just the cycle time reduction is absolutely huge. And that's another thing too. It's like ice is also a very good thing to mine. So like there's basically 3 things that you would be mining if you're just going for profit. Number 1 being the merc. That's going to be the best thing you can mine for the money, because that morphite will just that's the only thing you'll actually refine to export, because morphite is just so much smaller than the compressed version of merc. And also, if you find a good engineering complex or a Tatara that has like a Tech 2 rig, and you get that really, and you have all the high yield skills for merc, you can get a pretty good yield from that. So merc being the most valuable thing if you're going for profit. Below that would be your R64 moons, stuff like that, where you'd have to rely on Orca, Rorqual to get that stuff compressed and get it where it needs to go. And then ice. Ice used to be probably my number 2, but since they kind of increase the volume or increase the spawn rate of ice spells, the value has come down quite a bit. But it's also very easy taking like a Rorqual. I'd probably either pick Rorqual is usually really good for boosting in an ice field, because you can just kind of drag that fleet across the anomaly, grab everything, and do pretty well. And the reason I use a porpoise for ice mining, because it doesn't have a jump drive. Out here, a jump drive is king. The Rorqual being a very shining a shining example of this, because you can drag with the Rorqual doing ice, and then when you're done mining and you want to go back to your home system or whatever, you can either store all of your mining ships and jump back, or you can conduit jump back, and it makes moving a lot easier. You definitely don't want to gate jump a Rorqual either. And also, just like I talked about in my Rorqual video too, it's like even if you just bought a Rorqual just for the purpose of like logistics and moving your mining fleet around, then that works as well. That's a very valid reason for owning one. You don't have to worry about buying the mining drones for it or anything. Those are just a waste of money or waste of bisque for the most part. So, but overall, like, I don't mind Null-Sec. It was, for a time, it was really, really great to be able to have a single, and I've shown you this tune before, it's got like 80 million skill points, and it's really nice to have a singular character that can do PI It can do DED sites with the Ting a Marauder. It can do combat anomalies. It can scan data relic sites. It can mine everything. It can just do so much with one character, and that gives you so much freedom, and it helps alleviate burnout, because for the past year or so, that's pretty much all only mining I've actually done in Null-Sec was like Merc, Ice, and then that was just stuff that was being used like Morphite. The material that comes from Merc was strictly just an export for me, right? And it's small enough. The ISK per M3 is so good on that stuff that if I had to export, say, something that was not really worth the cost, like fuel blocks, for instance. Fuel blocks are absolutely horrible to fill a jump freighter with, pay the fee, and get it like out to wherever, because they're just the amount of value that you can pack into a jump freighter for fuel blocks is almost not worth the cost it would be to move it. So that's why I use things like Morphite from Merc to pad that, right? So let's say if I want to move 350,000 cubic meters of export out, and most of that, let's say like not, you don't even have to have that much Morphite, like like 5,000 units of Morphite is enough to justify jumping it out with the jump freighter. But it's like, let's say you have like most of the jump freighter full of just nothing but fuel blocks, which isn't a whole lot of value, but then you put like 5,000, 2,000 to 5,000 or more Morphite in there with it, then it becomes worth it, because it's kind of like the little cherry on top. And I used to mine Mercoxit for that very reason, to line the export and make a lot of my my lesser valued exports worth the actual trip. And it could be anything, like not even just fuel blocks. I usually don't export fuel blocks. It's so easy to sell them because everybody has structures. That's why ice is a number one thing for mining in Null-Sec 2, is because, and the thing is, if you're not making, you don't even have to make fuel blocks to make a killing on ice. You can literally sell your compressed ice to people who are already doing the PI, and then you don't have to actually worry about having a increasing amount of liquid ozone and heavy water and stront piling up that will be very difficult for you to move. So it's almost easier if you really just want to kind of like keep your assets and your volume of your assets down to where you can kind of just run and gun. Go out there, mine things like Merc and reprocess that, mine ice, compress and sell that, and go that way. If I ever get back really into like ice mining with like Oracle and stuff, I probably won't do the PI for fuel blocks, because it's not every day I feel like going out there and actually doing the ice field either. I mean, most of the time around where I was at in Null-Sec, the ice field was pretty much always there, and there was really no competition. But it's like the positioning too about those ice belts is important. It's like, is it a main thoroughfare between like certain regions? Like, is it heavy traffic, not just for like blue, but also for like neutrals? That's why I try to also stay away from region gates, like the big long jump you take from one null to another. Those are choke points, right? So you don't want to like really set up shop in those areas either. You could also do things like NPC null, but those are going to have like your run-of-the-mill anomalies. Really what you want to really benefit in mining in Null-Sec, you really need a system that has all the ore upgrades in its iHub. It has a high, we're saying like 4 to 5 industry index in that system, so you have like the colossal and the enormous available to you, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to actually go out and mine like a crocite or something like that, and like the amount of merc rocks would be much less. And that's why it's very important to do a lot of volume, and the way you increase that industrial index on that iHub upgrade is mining a certain volume. And that's where, and we've done ops before back in the day where we legit did not care about what we were mining, and we didn't need it, we didn't want it. We literally would just go out there and take rorquals and as many miners as possible and just mine as much volume as possible for the sole purpose of just boosting that ADM up, that industrial index to 5, so that and then once we got it up there to like 200% of 5, which is like the cap, then we would just go back to our normal operations and try to keep it above level 5. And then when it started to dip, we'd do the same thing. We'd go out there and just mine like every anomaly out. Moon mining helps us as well too, because moon mining, if you do long pools, there's a lot of volume on field, so you can go out there, and if your corporation is set up to do several of these a month, then that's enough. The moon mining is enough to actually keep that industry index up, and so that when you're not doing like moon ops, then you have access to all the anomalies. Just be careful with like some of the other regular run-of-the-mill anomalies, like the medium Argnor anomaly. Those will have rats in them and stuff like that you have to clear. There's also Merc anomalies that will have rats in them that you have to clear. So that's why I always go out and bookmark everything, because also you want to make sure that there's not like a rat carrier or a rat titan or a rat dread on a belt too. So I always bookmark going 100k out and then seeing what rocks are there, bookmarking them, survey the scenery. It's all about information. Whereas in like high sec, you don't really have to do that. About the only thing you're doing is looking for like a pirate stronghold every day. And if you don't see that, you're pretty much good to go. Or if you don't see safety or code or whoever, then you're pretty much good to go. But players aren't necessarily the only thing you have to worry about in Null-Sec either. You have to worry about capital rats that randomly spawn. The mechanic that actually triggers them is still unknown to me. I have not been able to find any hard evidence about what actually triggers it. It's still my belief that it has to do with industry index. I think the more a system stays at like industry 5, then I think that you have a better chance of getting a lot of rat dreads, and those are just triggered randomly. I think if you're like index 3 to 4, that's what kind of triggers rat carriers. And then I think that if the volume that's mined in the system is significantly, like really, really crazy high, I think that is potentially what probably triggers the rat titans to actually show up. But even after many years of Null-Sec mining, and like this really hasn't been a thing. It used to happen a lot less than it does now, but they've really kind of upped it. You'll see dreads all the time show up. But I really think that they kind of upped the recurrence of that stuff. But in most cases, like if you're flying anything that other than like a skiff, even with a skiff, I've had a rat dread or a rat carrier come onto grid, and then I've hit warp at that point and still was able to get off. I would get like neuted and stuff. The carriers will newt for the Garistas and stuff like that. You can get away from them. But if you're not paying attention, then that can be a problem. You also want to make sure that your overview has pretty much every type of NPC on it as well, because by default those rat carriers, rat dread, rat titans, they won't show up on your default overview. The first time you see them, you'll have to probably right click and add to overview, unless you just add everything in that category in your overview settings, which is what I normally do. But if you don't want to actually worry about that, then until you see one, you should try to mine completely zoomed out so that you can better see them come in, right? Because they're going to come in, several clicks off. So do yourself some favors there. But there's a lot of nuances that go into mining in Null-Sec. It's very much worth it. The politics and like the constantly shifting of the geopolitics and the powers that be might make it a little bit difficult to really get comfortable and set up. There's a lot of shifting going on right now. But also, I'm just not really into the political things, so it's like that's one reason I'm kind of getting out and trying to just do more things in places like Poshvin and maybe some wormhole space. But I mean, there's still politics. There's politics everywhere. Getting out of Null-Sec is not going to get you away from politics. There's politics in high sec. I mean, look at the extortion of ice and everything. And if you can mine ice in high sec, then and you're not getting bumped or whatever, then get as much as you can, because chances are it's not something that you can completely repeat unless you actually get into a corporation that is part of that extortion, is part of that, and it has like enough show of force to actually like push back against that stuff. Because most of the code, safety, mining permit, all that extortion stuff, any level of like pushback by any like sort of fleet, combat fleet, is usually enough to push them away, right? They like targets that are miners with no combat alts or no essential things to like pretty put any pressure back on them. So if you do get in a corporation, or you do have alts that can just come to that ice grid with you and also just be like, you know, they can suicide gank those bumpers or whatever, excuse me, they'll probably end up leaving you alone, because that's not their kind of target. They want somebody that they can push around literally, and that's kind of the game you have to play with ice. If you can get in that situation where you can do a lot of ice in high sec, that's great. So, but we're completely full on this dude. I'm gonna go ahead and warp him back to the to Tara, get it all compressed. I was gonna kind of show you kind of what it was like. I was hoping some rats would have shown up so I could show you the tankiness, but every time I hit record and try to like show you guys how to tank rats in Nullsec, I never get a spawn. So that's super annoying. But 20 minutes of mining out here, mining this crocite, you know, after it's compressed, it'll probably be a 9 or a 10 million, which is not bad. Merc is so much better, but like I said, I didn't have any of my deep cores. I've already started moving everything out. I got about another 11 hours, and I'll probably make a contract to send all my stuff out and get this tune back in high sec and start playing around with it. So I'm actually kind of excited for that. Next few episodes, we're going to be trying to like figure out a good purpose for this 80 million skill point alt. But thank you for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want to support the channel and the series, consider becoming a member. Peace out.